Sure, we good to go. All right. Wait for a couple people to join us on the stream here. My goodness. Are you excited, bro? I'm so excited right now for some Giants football right off the bat. And right now we're just seeing so much. Man, I've been waiting so long for this day to happen. Just watching Red Zone all day long, not moving a muscle atrophy in full flux. It's so bad. It's awful. But guys, as you're filtering in here, we have 30 minutes until the New York Giants take on the Tennessee Titans in week 1. I know you're excited. I am certainly excited. This is going to be an interesting game. The inactive list is definitely a bit lengthy. Kayvon Thibodeau, Azeez Ojulari have been ruled out for this game. Obviously, that's not ideal. Dane Belton's also out. Antonio Williams, Justin Lane, Tyree Phillips, and Darius Slayton. I'm curious about Darius. Why do you think Darius Slayton is missing this game? I don't know.
Because he's not good enough to play. I think that's really all it is.
You think so?
Just being honest, I think he's just inactive because they've got better depth on the roster than Darius Slayton. I think they feel that, Richie James, other guys are probably more effective. David Sills as well. I know I read that David Sills was the first one out there in warm-ups, so he's been out there getting ready. So I would assume that they decided to go with David Sills instead of Darius Slayton on the active roster.
So you do actually think that David Sills is replacing him right now?
I do.
Really?
I think that's what's happening. They're both healthy, so it's not a matter of health. I don't think Darius Slayton has any health issues. I think he's just inactive because they feel like they can rely on David Sills more.
Interesting. What do you guys think? If you're in here so far, do you think David Sills should be getting these reps over Darius Slayton? Because I mean, David Sills definitely has great chemistry, but I guess Darius Slayton, his only real value here is like the deep ball. He's not a great route runner. He really offers you a lot of speed on that end, but I guess David Sills has made an impression. And I like how the coaching staff is kind of giving reps to guys who have earned it, right? They've really put the work in. They want to be there. They've been doing their best. And I think Sills definitely could be getting a substantial amount of playing time. I mean, Brian Dable said it recently, didn't he? He said a couple weeks ago that David Sills is not only in line to make the team, he's in line to play. So that's interesting. You got Kenny Galladay, Kadarius Toney's obviously healthy. Sterling Shepard's playing today. Sills has earned it. And, this is definitely a good opportunity for him. And yeah, Fireplace Gaming, essentially, they cut Slayton without cutting him. They basically just kept him on his depth at a minimum. What are they paying him? $1 million. So it's not like it's that much. But, Anthony, who are you looking at today as the primary receivers that you think Daniel Jones will rely on? I think Shep, if he's out there for a lot of snaps, will be getting a lot of work. I think Wan'Dale Robinson and Kadarius Toney, obviously, as long as he's healthy, he's going to get in the ball for sure.
Yeah, I mean, all those guys that you just mentioned, but I'm thinking that Sterling Shepard's going to have a surprisingly very solid performance. I think you're going to see him get really involved in the game plan. I think he is the most reliable wide receiver on the Giants roster when he's healthy. He doesn't drop many passes. He's the best route runner, and he's just dependable on third down in every important situation. Red zone and third down, that's where Sterling Shepard thrives, and I think that's where he's really going to, make an impact in today's game plan. Kenny Galladay, I'm still on the fence with him. Last season left a sour taste in everybody's mouth. So we'll see how he gets involved in the game plan. But I want to say your guy, Wan'Dale Robinson, I'm expecting him to get some touches today, some manufactured plays, and see how they can get him involved in the game plan. I'm super excited to see how they choose to involve him in this game plan. And I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see how he plays versus Kadarius Toney, who plays which role, because I know they have a similar skill set, but not the same, but it is similar. So it's going to be interesting to see how Brian Dable and Mike Kafka use both of those players in tandem with one another. I'm really curious to see how that goes.
Yeah, I had this hot take a couple of weeks ago, and I still kind of stand by it. I think that Wan'Dale Robinson is going to have more targets than Kenny Galladay, and I could even see him having more touchdowns than Kenny Galladay at the end of the season. Kenny obviously is a guy who the Giants want more out of. They started him in that last game of the preseason for a reason. Everybody else was kind of sitting, not doing much. Galladay played the most reps out of any veteran. So that kind of stood out to me. Maybe he obviously is working through that surgery he had this offseason that kind of nobody knew about until the last week. But this is a guy who needs to earn his money, $72 million. He's got to stand up and he's got to do something big. So, and I'll tell you what, somewhere now, Jamar Chase just scored a touchdown for my fantasy team with 4 seconds left on the clock. Let's freaking go. 6-yard touchdown pass. I know, Anthony, you're not happy about that. Got the defense of the Steelers.
Listen, I can't complain too hard because the Steelers defense, I mean, they forced so many turnovers anyway. So, I mean, it's still a lot of points from the Steelers defense today. But
I mean,
okay.
The fact that Joe Burrow just threw 4 interceptions and still won this game is absolutely insane. I mean, Minka Fitzpatrick went absolutely off.
I'm taking a look at, the red zone. Falcons in classic Falcon fashion just choked the game away with the Saints.
No
Saints just
way.
kicked a field goal for the win.
Are you
Well, there's 20
serious?
seconds left, so we'll see. But they did just take the lead in the final minute of the game. So
I
classic Falcons. Classic Falcons.
You know what I've come to learn about football is that like nothing matters until the fourth quarter. You could be up by
Mm,
3 scores and suddenly like a team will just march back. It's absolutely insane.
Yep.
And Fireplace Gaming, Wandale might have 10 catches based off the scheme alone. Absolutely. He's going to be very
Yeah.
active in the screen game, very active in the short concepts. I do think he's going to be active downfield though. Like I wouldn't rule it out. He's a small guy. He's got a small catch radius. He did 16 pass catches downfield last year for Kentucky, and I think he ranked like pretty highly among all receivers in college with deep catches downfield. He was definitely among the top in screen catches, but he's a guy I wouldn't rule out as being a downfield threat. He's smaller. Of course, you kind of want those bigger guys down there, but you don't necessarily need them. If he's a great route runner, if he can bait those safeties to shift, he can take advantage of that. And I think that he's got some decent aggression to him as well. He's definitely strong. I think he put up like 19 bench press at 225, and he is not a big guy. He's like, 190 pounds, maybe probably less, 180, 175. No, he's got to be like 190 pounds. But like still, that's still unbelievable. Really strong guy for Wandale. And, let's talk about this offensive line, though, guys. What are your thoughts about the offensive line? You got Mark Lewinsky at right guard. You got Evan Neal at right tackle, John Feliciano, Ben Bredesen, Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas, I think, is in line for an all-pro level season. I think Evan Neal will progress as the year goes on, but I wouldn't expect him to be this elite guy right off the bat. Obviously, we saw a couple of struggles, during preseason, but Glowinski is a very, very capable, competent guard. Ben Bredesen, we know, is not great. He's okay, maybe average at best. And then Feliciano, we don't really know what he's going to offer. This is definitely a better group than what we had last year, Anthony. But, what are your thoughts about them right now? Who's got to step up here and offer their best? Because I think it's got to be Ben Bredesen.
Yeah.
And Evan Neal, too. It's tough to choose.
Well, I'd say Ben Bredesen is the one that needs to stand up along with John Feliciano. I think those are the two weak links in the offensive line if I have to pick them. Obviously, it's a backup left guard. So, yeah, that's the weak link. But also, John Feliciano, I think, is a capable player, but he's also never played center at a full-time position. He's played it in spurts, but he's never been full-time a starting center for a football team. So I think he's one of the guys that needs to step up. He is a leader in the locker room. He's a veteran presence, but he needs to step up and show by example, lead by example on the football field and show that he wasn't just signed because he's got familiarity with the coaches. He needs to show that he was signed because he is a quality center, because I don't think that's necessarily been proven just yet. But general thoughts on the offensive line. I agree with you. As you mentioned, you take a look at this year's week one lineup on the offensive line compared to last year's week one offensive line lineup. I think it's exponentially better. I think the Giants are better at left tackle because Andrew Thomas has improved as a player. I think they're better at right tackle because Evan Neal is far better than whoever trotted out there last year. Right guard, Mark Lewinsky is an upgrade over Will Hernandez, absolutely. And I do think John Feliciano can be an upgrade. Again, he is kind of my question mark on the offensive line. And I think the center position, I know if you're going by the value of the position, it's not really the most valuable position on the offensive line. But the fact that he's kind of the quarterback of the offensive line, I think is important. And I think that's the part of the game that he's going to thrive in. If John Feliciano isn't the best at blocking, I think what he is going to be good at is leading and calling out protections and, directing signals basically. But that left guard position really could be make or break for the Giants in 2022. Ben Bredesen going out there as the starter in week one, but who knows, maybe in week two it'll be Joshua Azido if Ben Bredesen doesn't play well, but I hope not. I don't want to see a revolving door at left guard again, because the Giants had that last year, a massive revolving door at the left guard position, and it was very detrimental to the performance of the entire offensive line. It's a lot of continuity that goes into that, a lot of chemistry amongst offensive linemen. When you have just one position and it's just rotating out different starters every week, it affects all the other positions on the offensive line. So that's the X factor for me up front with the offensive line. But again, like you said, like I've said, this is a much better unit than the one we put out there in week one of 2021. So I'm pretty excited to see the offensive line get to work this year.
Absolutely. But guys, who are you guys thinking about looking at today in today's game? Who do you think is the catalyst for the Giants to win this one? Obviously, you're without Kayvon Thibodeau, you're without Azeez Ojulari. You're really relying on Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams to provide that pass rush. You're asking a lot of Quincy Roche. You're asking a lot of Ocean Ximenez and Jaheed Ward. I think it's those reserve outside linebackers. One of those guys has got to step up big for this team. Ocean Ximenez kind of disappeared the last couple of years. We don't exactly know what he's going to offer. He was on the fringe of the roster to begin with. And Roche, they just signed him off the practice squad. And, he's a solid player, had some good games specifically against Carolina last year, but I don't necessarily know how much he's going to provide. on defense. We can hope, and I think that he does have some talent. He can come up in some big moments, but I don't exactly know how much he's going to offer this team. And Jaheed Ward is a veteran, coming from Jacksonville last year, spent time in Baltimore with Wink Martindale. But I think you're just talking about dialing up a lot of blitzes, dialing up as many unique looks as you possibly can. To provide your defense with a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more versatility. But, if I had to pinpoint a catalyst, I think it's Aaron Robinson. I think Ryan Tannehill is going to target him frequently. I think he's probably guarding Treylon Burks. Robert Woods probably gets Adoree Jackson, even though he's coming off that ACL tear. Maybe you have Adoree Jackson facing off against Treylon Burks. It could go either or, but I think Aaron Robinson is the one they're going to try to pick on. They know he's a liability. Without much of a pass rush off the edge, they're going to have to play a lot more dynamic in terms of blitzing their linebackers, blitzing their safeties, and you're going to have your corners on an island. And Aaron Robinson on an island, it kind of scares the shit out of me, to be quite honest with you. But what are your thoughts on Aaron Robinson? Do you think he kind of is the catalyst for this defense to stop them? I know Derrick Henry stopping him is the catalyst in general, but if you have a weak point at cornerback, it definitely can be exposed.
Yeah, if you have a weak point at cornerback, it can be exposed. Unfortunately, I feel like the Giants' defense in general is kind of a weak point. Really, when you're looking at the talent on the roster, I think there is more talent on the offensive side of the ball. I think the depth on the defensive side of the ball is really, really thin. I love the safety position. I think Julian Love and Xavier McKinney are very capable, and I think Xavier McKinney, in fact, could be an all-pro this year. But when you're looking at this linebacker core, as Fireplace Gaming just pointed out, they need to step up because losing Blake Martinez, I get he wasn't playing too well in preseason, not a fit for the Giants' defensive scheme, but still, that is cutting your starting linebacker just weeks out from the start of the regular season. It was a big loss for the Giants, and I'm not 100% sure how they plan to supplement that loss. They've got a bunch of young ragtag team of guys in the linebacker core that they're relying on here. And that's not really the most heartwarming, confident inducing thing, right? I'm I don't know. I'm really skeptical about that linebacker position. You mentioned it, the cornerback position as well. Cordell Flatt had his struggles in the preseason, especially tackling. I saw him miss quite a number of tackles. So I'm a little worried that Derrick Henry is going to take an outside zone and just basically run over Cordell Flatt and embarrass him. That is a fear that I have inside going into today. And I think that really just taking a look at the secondary, it's very thin. The linebacker core is very thin. I feel pretty confident about the defensive line. I'm a big Quincy Roche fan. I think Quincy Roche is the perfect guy to have in a pinch like this when you have your outside linebackers who are injured and not starting. Quincy Roche has been in this position before. He succeeded in this position before. So I really like elevating him from the practice squad. I think that he can be a solid contributor today. But again, speaking generally about the depth on defense, I think one injury at any position and you're screwed. There's just not a lot of depth defensively for the Giants right now. They have a lot of dead cap. They're paying a lot of players that they don't want to be paying a lot of money. So, thanks to Dave Gettleman, he's really left us with zero depth on the defensive side of the ball. So I think the only way that the Giants can win this game, if we're really going to get into it, they got to play turnover-free football on the offensive side of the ball, and the offense needs to score touchdowns, not field goals. Graham Gano, love him. He's an amazing kicker, but Daniel Jones needs to get his ass in that freaking end zone, throw the ball to Wandale, throw it to Kenny G, get some touchdowns on the board. It's going to have to be a shootout if the Giants want to win this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, are you worried about Kadarius Toney in this wet kind of field today with his knees and ankles?
One thing that I'll say, yeah, so the wet field is definitely a factor that's going to come into play here. You could see some fumbles, you could see some errant passes from both of the quarterbacks, of course, but I will say, if my memory serves me correctly, the Titans do play on grass, which is super important. When you're playing on turf and it's raining, that spells trouble for your ACL. Seriously, playing on the turf, it's already slick as it is because it's not real grass. There's not as much grip on the turf, and then when it's wet, it's even worse. But at least with when you're playing in Tennessee and you're playing on a grass field, you've got some mud, you've got more of a give into the field. It's actually maybe even a little bit better for your knees because there is more give and it's not like running on a solid hard ground compared to the turf. So I will say, yes, it's a rainy day and that could spell some injury issues and some turnover issues, but I will say, I think that the grass will help out with that. And I think that, with Kadarius Toney, I know you asked me about him specifically because he is so injury prone in the lower half of his body, but I don't know, man. I think Kadarius Toney is going to have a solid game. I think he needs to have a solid game in order for the Giants to win. And I'm not super worried about it. If you take a look back at, his games with the Florida Gators, the Florida Gators it's Florida. I live in Florida right now. It is disgusting here all the time. It's raining all the time. It was thunderstorming yesterday. It's pretty frequent that Kadarius Toney Toney had to play in practice on a grass field in some rain. So these are conditions that Kadarius Toney specifically is probably used to from his time with the Gators. So I'm not super worried about Kadarius Toney in today's game. He's healthy, and I'm ready to watch him play. I'm wearing his jersey. If you couldn't see, I got the 89 on my shoulders. I love Toney. He's one of my favorite players on the Giants, and I think he's going to be in line for a big game against the Titans today.
Look, if Toney can stay healthy, you're looking at a dynamic receiver that can do so much for this offense. You just give him the ball. And honestly, if anybody watched the Jets game here, if you looked at Garrett Wilson, he looked like he had some moves too. He was putting on some serious breaks and change of direction was on point. But Toney's is just on another level. Like he's there. You never watch Talladega Nights, and he's like, now you see him. No, now you don't. The Ricky Bobby kind of thing. It's impressive. But again, it puts a lot of strain on his ankles, puts a lot of strain on his knees. He's been dealing with that vague injury out of his leg that nobody really knows what was going on with him, but it seems like he's 100% healthy now. It seems like he's ready to go. I wonder how they look to mitigate his, those injuries down the line. I wonder how his workload is managed because of that. Do you think that they will actually manage his workload? Because I think if you're 100% healthy, you go 100%. Like you can't hold NFL players back. At any given moment, they could get hurt. You can't be like picking what play to play them in. If they're good to go, you just kind of got to throw them out there. And I think Toney's going to be a huge focal point. I know Shepard's back, but I don't really necessarily think that they're going to be relying on him a lot. I think they just kind of want to get his feet wet. Get him back into live action, make sure he's good to go. I think Kenny's going to get a lot of reps. Saquon's going to be the focal point. I think Saquon Barkley is going to be, if there's anyone that's going to score a touchdown today, it's going to be Saquon. He is going to be an active guy in the receiving game. He's obviously going to be a huge part of that running game. He is the running game. And that right side of the offensive line now with, Glowinski and Evan Neal. And then you have Daniel Bellinger, who's a great blocker in line as well. Run it. Just freaking keep running it to that right side. See how far that they can go. And I think Evan Neal, that big frame, was a 350-pound guy. He can move the chains, for Saquon. He can open up those gaps. And then, of course, you have Andrew Thomas at left tackle and Ben Bredesen. He's okay. Not terrible as a run blocker, but I hope to see, them really exposing the Titans on that end. But they have a good defense. Like the Tennessee Titans always have a pretty solid defense. I just wonder, how do you get to Ryan Tannehill? You can't give a guy like this. He's not great. But I do think that he's got to, you got to put pressure on him somehow. And Brett, it's for my hands, right? Type a lot. So just making sure that my hand health is on point.
He don't want
Toney.
arthritis, bro. He doesn't want any arthritis. He's got to keep his hands in good shape, man.
I don't want any
Alex's
of that arthritis.
hands. I see this question all the time. Alex's hands are his livelihood. Like he's a writer and podcaster. Like it makes sense for him to wear the gloves. I might need to invest personally, but let's get back to talking about Giants football. I want to comment on some of the things you said. Of course, I think, okay, with Kadarius Toney, yes, he needs to go 100%. It's different with Sterling Shepard. You can work him back because he's had such a quick turnaround from a torn Achilles. It's been like less than 6 or 8 months is what I read. It's been a very quick turnaround for him, and he's 100% healthy, apparently, and he's ready to go. It makes sense to work him back into the lineup, though. It's been a while since, he's been fully healthy, so you don't want to rush him back. But with Kadarius Toney, what injuries did he have? A couple sprained ankles, and a sore hip, right? So I think he's good to go, man. Just put Kadarius Toney out there, let him play balls to the walls. If he gets injured again, so be it. Next man up. But all of these players, if they are 100% healthy, they need to play 100% of the game. They need to go out there, make an impact. Every game counts. Every snap counts. Every yard, every inch. That's the name of the game. That is football. Go out there, put your balls to the wall, and get on the field. So, and then, of course, next point that you made, Saquon Barkley. I will say I think this offense was built around Saquon Barkley. I think he's going to be the focal point of this offense. I think for the New York Giants offense to succeed, Saquon Barkley needs to stay healthy, and he needs to get heavily involved. That means when he's lined up out wide or he's making some routes out of the backfield, he's got to beat his man because he's going to get a lot of targets in the receiving game, I predict. I think Brian Dable is going to make that a huge point of emphasis in the Giants offense, is getting Saquon Barkley involved as a receiver. Not only as a receiver, though, of course, as a rusher, the running back of the Giants, he has a much better offensive line this year. And I believe he's got much better offensive coaching as well. So I do think that this is going to be a major bounce back season for Saquon Barkley. I know we've been saying that for each of the last 2 years. I hope that it doesn't get derailed by an injury again this year. But just taking a look at the way that the Giants have built this offense, the way the scheme plays to Saquon's strengths, I think it's going to be a really exciting season. The number one thing, though, Saquon Barkley needs to stay healthy. But if he does, I think he's in line for a huge year. And today specifically, I will say, though, this is a tough matchup. This was the number
Yeah.
one rushing defense in the NFL last season. The Titans allowed only 83.5 rushing yards per game in the 2021 season. This is going to be a tough one. They know how to dial up a defensive scheme that stuffs the run. It's going to be a tough matchup for Saquon Barkley and the Giants offensive line, but if they're able to get him involved in the receiving game, I think that's the X factor here. Get Saquon Barkley involved in the receiving game. That will open things up for him in the running game, and that could hopefully lead the Giants to have a very successful performance on the offensive side of the ball.
Absolutely. So what is going on, Caesar, Killa B, Yita? We're having a good day today. Just a great day of football all around. We got 2 games in extra time right now in overtime. We got the Bengals and Steelers. Bengals are making moves. They're about to score right now and end this game. Then you have the Colts and Texans. Colts are also making serious moves. I got Michael Pittman and Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon on my fantasy team, so I'm feeling quite good right now. Some really good games before. Commanders and Jags. Obviously the Jags kind of blowing a late lead there. Not surprised. Eagles almost blew a lead to the Lions. Our old friend James Bradbury had a pick 6, which really hurts the soul deeply. That kind of sucked. The Ravens obviously beat the shit out of our little brothers, the New York Jets. So that was fun to watch. Lamar looked fantastic. A lot of deep passes. This is a good day for football, man. I sat there, didn't move a single muscle, and I know you guys probably did the same. If you're at the game right now down in Nashville, enjoy it. It's going to be a fun one. Hopefully we can pull out this win or at least be very, very competitive. I don't want to, sit after this game and talk about all the things the Giants did poorly. So that would be kind of sucky. But, Platano Power is last second decision, please. Do I start Tony or Kenny G? Personally, I am starting Kadarius Toney. I started him over Kareem Hunt, which was a bad idea, and James Robinson, another bad idea. And I also started him over Chris Godwin, which could also be a bad idea. So we'll see what happens. But I would definitely start Tony. I think Kenny G ultimately is just not a scheme fit. Primarily, I think that Tony is. He does a lot of stuff in the gadget area, does a lot of stuff short to intermediate range, and he can make it a lot of people miss in the open field. And that's kind of what Mike Kafka and Brian Dable like to do. They like to get playmakers in the open field, and they like to expose that stuff right there. So, and good job starting Hunt. That was definitely a good move. And Jeffrey, if the G-men lose, the dinosaur is probably to blame. Poor Tibosaurus Rex would not. That would be a tough loss for us at the Fireside Giants community. Losing Tibosaurus Rex after just 1 week after naming him would be a sudden passing for our good friend. But guys, we have the game coming up in about 2 minutes here. Hopefully you enjoy it. Leave your stat predictions, your score predictions below. Because we are Giants fans, I have to go for the Giants win this game. I have to predict that they're going to win this game. I'm going to say the offense shows a lot more production. They show efficiency, and I think that we end up winning this game 24-17. I think Derrick Henry gets 2 scores. I think Ryan Tannehill struggles somehow in this game. I think Xavier McKinney has an interception. He showcases that speed. He showcases all of that good stuff. And I think that he sets the stage for what could be an all-pro level season for X-Man. So I'm excited about that. I think the pass rush definitely will struggle, but I think that Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence will have a couple of big moments. And I think that the insanely blitz heavy system that Wink Martindale runs will come to fruition and actually produce today. So I'm going to go 24-17 Giants. Anthony, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'm going to be the more objective, more realistic guy here. Of course, I know I have my Giants bias. I really want to pick the Giants to win the game, but I want to be a little bit of a contrarian opinion. You're picking the Giants, so I'll just go ahead. I'll pick the Titans 28-21. I think that the Giants offense is going to have its good moments. I think there's going to be times where it looks like a much improved unit. However, I think Derrick Henry is going to be too much for the Giants' thin depth defense to slow down. I think that Derrick Henry is going to have a huge day. I think he's going to rush for 120 yards at least. And I think Ryan Tannehill, as long as he keeps the ball out of harm's way, it should be a pretty, manageable win for the Titans. However, I think the Giants are going to be good competition. I think that they will lose by less than 1 possession. So 7 points or less, a loss here for the Giants. But if I'm being objective, trying to be unbiased, I got to pick the Titans to win. However, I'm going to be downstairs screaming in front of all my frat brothers, rooting on the Giants. I can't wait for this game. I am so freaking excited. And I'm hoping to see 5 touchdowns from Daniel Jones and 3 of them to Kadarius Toney. I would love to see that in my dream world. But all right, we'll see, man. I want to be objective, so I'm going to go ahead and pick the Titans.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think Tony gets his first touchdown today, which would be awesome. His first NFL touchdown. Just missed it a couple times last year, but hopefully he stays healthy. And then sending out a little prayer circle for everybody right now. Let's keep this team healthy. Please, God, nobody get injured. We cannot afford anymore. We have no depth on this squad. So I'm excited to see how this team produces, how they perform. Hopefully you guys enjoy this game. We'll catch you guys on the after. We're going to do a little post-game show. Breaking down everything that happened in this game. So hopefully it's a good one and we don't have to have any negative talks, but enjoy the game, my friends. Have a great rest of your day and we'll catch you guys a bit later.